I'm Brian Winnekins at the NAFB convention in Kansas City. And again, thank you to our broadcast sponsors, including Dairyland Seeds, Novozymes, and Howard White, your Stein seed dealer serving the Westby and Viroqua area. I'm with Roger Johnson. He is president of National Farmers Union. And Roger, thank you for joining us today. Well, let's take a look at our crystal balls for 2012. What do you see coming down the line? Obviously, they're talking about the Farm Bill now, but if they don't get it dealt with, you think that we'll start dealing with a new farm bill here next year?
Almost certainly. If it doesn't happen in the super committee process, it will have to happen under regular order, and certainly they will start considering it in 2012. I don't think there's much likelihood that it could be passed in 2012, and so we're likely to be looking at the following year. And the debate will be much different if it happens outside of the super committee process as opposed to what's happening right now inside the process. The big difference is there will be a lot of public discussion about it, because hopefully we'll have hearings, we'll have bills introduced, we'll have markups, we'll have votes up or down on provisions. Folks will be able to weigh in on those different provisions, and we'll sort of do it the way it's normally done. The super committee process involves almost none of that, just because of this extraordinarily tight time frame.
I know one of the recently in Nebraska with the Nebraska Farmers Union, they started to work a little bit with HSUS. Are you seeing some backlash from that or not?
Yes. Yeah, we are. And, it's important for folks to understand that the National Farmers Union is really a federation of all the state associations. And each of those states have their own ability and right to establish their own policy. We very much are a grassroots organization. The local members establish the policy. They bring it up through the organizations. And state organizations are allowed to have positions that are different than the National Association and different than other state organizations. So, that's caused a lot of conversation within our organization and a lot of conversation, obviously, outside of the organization as well. We'll see where it goes, and interestingly, our national convention in March will be held in Omaha. So it likely will be an issue for consideration at our national convention. I'd be surprised if on the national level we end up doing what Nebraska has done. But, it's the delegates that will make that decision.
Again, and has, from a national standpoint, is there a concern? While I understand that the states have the ability to come up with their own policy, this is almost more than a regional, where Wisconsin Farmers Union votes to support the Dairy Price Stabilization Act, but New York votes again. Those are regional. This is kind of a pretty big national type issue. So have you seen any type of backlash on the Hill or in the Senate when you've gone to meet with some of the beef state folks or the livestock senators and congressmen?
Well, no, I wouldn't say so. We've made it clear that, and the Nebraska organization has made it clear this is a Nebraska decision, and people understand that. And I think members of Congress really respect the fact that we have state organizations that are allowed to establish their own policy. They represent these states. They understand that sort of thing. This is one of those really difficult issues. Because the Humane Society, as most folks know, maybe most folks don't know this, but they spent less than 1% of their income on actually sheltering animals. And that's not the public perception of what happens within HSUS. Much of their effort is focused on sort of these sort of public policy changes to how animal agriculture does business. And a huge amount of their budget actually is spent on these television commercials that we all see with this puppy with the big brown eyes staring in the camera, looking sad and appealing. We all, your hearts kind of melt when you see that. And the sense that folks are left with is that's what this organization is about, is trying to help shelter these puppies. And as a consequence, if you do state polling, you find enormous support for the kinds of things that they are asking for or advocating for. And those of us in production agriculture find ourselves in a very defensive position against it. And so it's a struggle. I mean, they have gone state to state, and different states have done different kinds of things trying to figure out how to deal with this. I mean, you've set up special committees or conferences in some states to try and look at humane standards. They've actually changed the law in some states. They've initiated action in others. And frankly, it's mostly in those states where there is the ability for direct democracy, for initiated measures to impact public policy. Because when you bring these folks in front of legislative committees, the arguments kind of ring hollow. And I think as a general rule, you won't find state legislators supporting the kinds of changes that they're advocating. But if it's a public debate and it's just about 30-second sound bites and pictures of sad puppies, it's difficult to win those arguments. So, I mean, we certainly understand the pressure that our folks in Nebraska have been facing. It's a complicated question. It's a complicated issue, but most of us in production agriculture, if we had our druthers, we wouldn't be going down that road.
And we'd also like to remind folks that HSUS is different from the Humane Society. There's the Humane Society of America. Those are the folks that help out with your pet shelters. The Humane Society of the United States, they're basically focused more on production agriculture, but they have the commercials with the puppies with the sad eyes and that whole thing. Well, again, Roger, we appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, good to be with you. Take care.
Roger Johnson, he's president of National Farmers Union. And from the NAFB convention in Kansas City, I'm Brian Winnikins.